Just wanted to do a quick video talking about why what you say, even when you're kidding, matters. So I had a somewhat of a coaching client, someone I'm mentoring, send me an email the other day. It was a little bit harsh. He said something about some girl at the gym that was interested in him or something like that. And then he said to me, can I still bang her if I put a bag over her head? And he was joking in saying this. And again, not trying to disparage this person because you know who you are, but I thought this was a good teaching moment because what you say, right? The words that you use, the verbiage that you use, even if you're joking, okay? Because a lot of people make like crass jokes. They joke about people, even to their friends, right? You might have a friendship with someone, right? You kind of insult each other, right? You're like, hey, dickhead, whatever, shit for brains. And you say this in a joking, kind of a loving way. And I get that camaraderie. But what you say, your subconscious registers. And what happens is it actually changes how you think, okay? Because of the words that you're using. So if you joke around with someone and you say derogatory things towards them, or even towards yourself. A lot of people make, especially guys, they do self-deprecating humor, right? One of the biggest problems that I see with a lot of guys that I coach with women is they will self-deprecate themselves in front of women. They'll say something like, oh yeah, no, I'm not that great, or whatever. They'll say something negative about themselves, or about, they get a compliment. They'll say, no, I don't really look that good, or they'll downplay it like to the point where it's not like a confident downplay. It's a like, I really believe this about myself. And they'll do that. And the more that they do that, the more that they'll actually believe that, and it will become registered in their subconscious. So it's really important to be careful of the language that you use with yourself, okay, with others, right? Again, you've probably seen my videos where I've talked about the idea of like when someone says about how they are something, right? Your subconscious listening. So a lot of guys will say, oh, I am lazy, or I'm scared, or I'm just not very smart. Whatever you say, you should never say that. Instead, you should say, I've done lazy things in the past, okay? Because that doesn't define who you are. Your identity is so important. And when you use these words, it influences your identity. So getting back to the gym story. So, they probably just trying to be cool. Like, okay, yeah, I'm going to joke around and say this thing. But when you say this, right, even if you didn't mean it that way, what ends up happening is like you get used to that, right? You sort of desensitize yourself to that thing. And then you sort of now view other people less than you, or less human. And because of that, you're going to start acting in that way, right? You cannot say things about a person in a derogatory way and not treat them differently, even if you didn't mean it like that, right? So that's why, again, another example of this is backbiting, right? When you gossip about people, you talk behind their backs, okay? A lot of people start off a conversation saying, I don't mean to like be a jerk, but whatever. And then they say something about someone, and then they think that doesn't influence how they see them. Well, it absolutely does, okay? You're going to talk to someone behind their back, or talk about someone behind their back, and then what's going to happen is it's going to influence the way that you see them and the way that you see yourself, honestly. So you just want to avoid using any kind of language like that. In fact, just avoid any kind of derogatory statements. You don't need to talk crap about people. You don't need to talk crap about yourself. Try to instead fill your vocabulary with positive things. Try to say as much positive stuff as possible. If you're going to talk about someone, you've probably heard the phrase, maybe your mother said that if you have something to say, make sure it's good. Very, very important. If you start practicing this, what you'll find is that it will influence the way that you think, and that will influence your actions, and it will influence your own positivity and motivation in life, and it'll make you treat people better and be a better person, right? You cannot have a negative vocabulary and not be a negative person, right? Again, I talk about your identity being the most powerful force in the universe, okay? In fact, I've got a ton of identity content. I just made a video in the Bulldog Mindset membership. Click the link down below. You can join for $7 for the first month, talking about how to completely transform your identity. So right now, if you're sitting on your couch, if you're lazy, if you're fat, you don't have a girlfriend, you're not making a lot of money, I get it. Okay, I was there at one time. Go click the link down below and jump in there right now and go watch that identity video, seriously, on how to transform your identity. That will absolutely change your life. Even if you just joined for a month, you're like, John, this crap doesn't work, I just want a refund, go do it, because that video will be worth the $7. I promise you. There's no doubt in my mind. So go check that out. Now, the last thing I want to say about this, okay, is again about how identity is so important, okay? And what did I say about identity, right? If you've heard a lot of my my videos, you guys know that I talk about the way to change your identity is two things. One is your environment, okay? So you are what you pickle in, okay? The second one, that is your actions, okay? And so when you think about this, what I'm talking about here, about how you phrase things and how you talk about other people and how you joke around with your friends, those cover both of those things, actually. So it's a very powerful shaper of your identity. Why? Because your environment is who you're hanging around with, the vocabulary you use, right? The words that you're using, the thoughts that you're bringing into your head, that language, what you're reading, what you're talking about, where you're looking on the internet and joking around on the internet, and what kind of jokes you're consuming and that kind of content. That's all the environment, okay? You might think that's harmless, but negative stuff is not harmless. That's your environment. Your environment will shape your identity. Second thing is your action, okay? You cannot talk like a sailor and not act like a sailor, right? Your language will influence what your thoughts are and what your identity is. And so if you talk shit about people, if you talk in a derogatory way, even if you're joking around or whatever, then what's going to happen is it's going to shape your identity, and you're actually going to become that thing that originally you're joking about that you might despise. So don't become what you despise. Instead, filter your vocabulary, filter your language and your thoughts, and only use the vocabulary and thoughts of a person that is the person you want to be, right? So if you want to be a positive, motivational, uplifting person who treats people well, do that in practice, even when you're joking, as much as possible. Now, don't get me wrong. It's fine to joke every once in a while, but if it becomes a habit for you, okay, it's going to shape your identity. It's going to change who you are, and that's how you become that person. People don't become the people they are just by random chance, okay? It's not genetics for a large degree. It is what they repeatedly do, what they repeatedly say, what they allow into their life, and the environment that they stew in. So if you do that, again, not to really knock this person, this was just a good example, but this is what happens. This is the ultimate effect of that. And also, one last thing, bonus thing here, is people will view you differently because they don't know you're joking. They don't know what your actual thoughts are. Instead, they're just going to assume that if you say this is what you mean. So, take it for what you will.